Welcome to this edition of the Pharmacy Innovators podcast. Today we'll be joined by a returning guest, Joe Lassiter, to discuss the pharmacy informatics landscape. So welcome, Joe.
Hey Jim, really nice to be back. Looking forward to talking shop with you.
For listeners that might not have caught your earlier four-part series on automation, can you just give people a bit of your background?
Absolutely. So I'm currently a managing director and chief pharmacy informatics officer for Vizant. Prior to joining Vizant, I was the president and chief pharmacy informatics officer for the Robertson Group, a small consulting firm that focused on informatics and technology. And had the pleasure of being acquired by Vizant in 2022. Next year, I can't believe it, will be my 25th year of pharmacy practice. Um, been doing a variety of areas such as direct patient care, health system pharmacy administration and leadership, and of course, my love, pharmacy informatics and technology. I completed both a Bachelor and Master of Science in Pharmacy from St. Louis College of Pharmacy and a Doctor of Pharmacy degree at the University of Florida College of Pharmacy. And I have to walk the walk here and do continuous professional development. So I'm currently working on a Chief Technology Officer program at the Wharton School's Executive Education branch. Um, I really think it's important to be active in the profession. And one of the things I'm most proud about is being a past chair for the section of informatics and technology through AS.
Wow. Congratulations on that 25-year milestone. You're right, it doesn't seem possible.
I know I'm expecting a golden certificate or something, but I don't think that's going to come.
Yeah, we'll take that under advisement.
Yeah.
So, just to start, I think admittedly I'm a little biased, but in terms of overall informatics complexity, I think the pharmacy service line really ranks near the top of the list. But from experience, that isn't always recognized by hospital C-suites. What are you seeing out there in terms of how senior executives are currently viewing pharmacy informatics?
Yeah, great question, Jim. So I think senior leaders in healthcare systems, especially the chief financial officer and the chief operating officer, have always really had an eye on their technology investment, but they've largely left the oversight of that into their technology executives, such as the chief information officer, the chief technology officer, and we're starting to see these application leaders, such as the VP of applications. And historically, we really tried to answer this question, do we have the technology our health system needs? In the last decade or so, we've seen this renewed focus on the clinical side of informatics and the rise of leaders in medicine and nursing and technology, such as the Chief Medical Information Officer or the Chief Nursing Informatics Officer. And they jointly responsible to their Chief Medical Officer and Chief Nursing Officer, respectively, and collaborating with the CIO on technology needs. And this shift in focus really tries to answer the question, do our clinicians have the technology they need to safely and effectively deliver care to the patients at the health system? As we move forward, I'd really like to see the three-legged stool be complete there along with medicine and nursing and have a chief pharmacy informatics officer. And analogous to before, they work closely with the chief pharmacy executive in the organization and collaborate with those other roles to make sure that we're really demonstrating that pharmacy as an established high value pharmacy enterprise through the technology aspects. I think Mayo serves as a model for this approach, and there's other organizations out there who are really trying to achieve this. And that kind of framework answers the question, not only do our clinicians and patients have the technology they need, but from a medication management standpoint, is medication management safe, effective, economical, and efficient through technology? Um, I think that senior leaders know that their technology investment is of value to the health systems, and they also need to know what the impact is on clinicians and patients, and they need to monitor that investment. We know from our work that medication use is important and pervasive throughout health systems, and technology really needs to follow that.
Yeah, I mean, picking up on that chief pharmacy informatics officer theme, you get to work, around the country in a whole variety of different hospital settings. But what do you think we can and should be doing to really elevate the understanding and support around pharmacy informatics in that chief pharmacy informatics role with senior leadership?
I think there is really the investments in the technology are really spawn investments in other areas. A great example is that pharmacy revenue cycle. Years ago that wasn't recognized as kind of a specialty area, but the nuance of medication billing, contracting really impacts the overall budgets of the hospitals. And pharmacy informatics has a big component in the maintenance of medication use revenue cycle to make sure that bringing people up to speed has really resulted in adding millions of dollars to the revenue and enhancing the margin for our clients. And that's what we want to do. Pharmacy informatics is a driver to help speed value for these investments in other areas such as revenue cycle. Another example is inventory management. As we know, for pharmacy departments, the things that keep us up at night, not only the personnel, but also the investment in the millions of dollars in medications and making sure that they're appropriately distributed, handling challenges that happen with supply chain and drug shortages and shifting inventory around. Informatics and automation play a large role in that, making sure that it's visible across the organizations, it's accessible, there's standardized processes, and that we can pivot to things that are curveballs, such as the COVID example that we all lived through a couple of years ago. Lastly, making sure that we have operational efficiency. We know that our colleagues are that in the pharmacy technician space, been a challenging area for health systems to be able to staff those and bring in people who can contribute to operations. And automation and informatics and technology can really help be leveraged to make sure that we're having technicians practice at the top of their certification and license. Meanwhile, we're having a highly streamlined organization that can meet its operational metrics and deliver high quality care to patients.
Yeah, I think those are great examples, and with so many hospitals still struggling financially, I mean, I think the average hospital now is working on a 1 to 3% operating margin. Anytime I think, in our experience, we can tie financial performance to good concepts, it just goes that much further to advancing the chances of success in terms of those concepts.
And some of these concepts, Jim, to your point, I mean, these are, if we look at other industries other than healthcare, these are also tools that they put in place. They leverage their technology to make sure they have operational efficiency, the correct resourcing, make sure that their revenue is on top of everyone's mind. And I think we can learn some from those other industries. When you're looking at CIOs, health systems are increasingly bringing CIOs from non-healthcare fields into the health system to apply the principles that they've been successful with.
When I think a little bit about how pharmacy informatics operations are structured, I think, the old maxim of form follows function is certainly applicable to how pharmacy informatics services are organized and operated. But I don't think there's a gold standard blueprint for this yet that I've seen. And I've seen a variety of different models out there achieve some really great success. But what are you seeing out there for pharmacy informatics organizational models? And what do you think the pros and cons are of some of these different approaches?
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Jim. I think some of this is just evolution over time, where people landed, and there's really no wrong model, but there's just different approaches to it. And I see really three predominant frameworks out there. The first one is all pharmacy. And so all the pharmacy informatics resources are embedded in pharmacy. And this is great from a pharmacy outcome and leadership standpoint that work closely with the chief pharmacy officer to establish a high value pharmacy enterprise and make sure that the project's initiatives and outcomes or the technology is closely aligned with the work that needs to be done. Um, some of the negatives of that are sometimes that team can then be disconnected from IT and disconnected from nursing and medical informatics colleagues. And so that can have some downsides for priority setting and budgeting. It can increase the fragmentation of these systems, and pharmacy informatics can be seen as a department rather than really responsible for system wide medication use technology. On the flip side of the coin, what we've also seen is that this kind of all IT approach. So everybody's in IT. Anybody's working on technology is part of that department. And Working close with IT helps be connected to the larger technology initiatives that are happening at the enterprise. And typically, IT has the capital budgeting for projects. And so there's maybe a greater access to resources to meet the needs of the health system. On the downside, this is the flip side of what we saw with the all pharmacy model is that not being closely aligned with pharmacy's strategic plan and outcomes can be seen as, not supportive of some of the medication use outcomes that are trying to be accomplished at the health system. And typically, when pharmacy informatics sits in IT, there's more focus on build standards and process rather than workflows and outcomes that we see inside of pharmacy, because they're a little bit disconnected from that reality. And the third one, like all good things, is a hybrid of those two approaches. And in a lot of ways, this is the best of both worlds. The pharmacy informatics team has the chief pharmacy informatics officer, which is either a director level position with dual reporting to the chief pharmacy officer, as well as the CIO or perhaps the CMIO in the organization. And really understanding priorities from all those stakeholders and how they fit together, as well as having influence to affect the system-wide medication management outcomes through technology. The downside of that is it can feel a little bit like office space sometimes with too many bosses and priorities, but especially you need to make sure in those situations that lines of communication are clear, everybody's collaborating on the same page as what's going to be accomplished, and decision making is clear about how things are going to be prioritized.
Yeah, I think that's really the key. When I was leading the University of Utah pharmacy operations in Indiana University, Utah was the pharmacy only model and Indiana was all informatics. But the key was that the pharmacy leaders, Craig Herzog at Utah and Chris Urbanski at Indiana, were
Mhm.
both fantastic communicators. So they made
Absolutely.
sure both the pharmacy and the informatics department were up to speed on everything that was going on. And as a result, both models worked great. But it was largely due to the communication skills of those two.
Completely agree, and it's really interesting. I mean, we kind of need to almost wear two hats there. The build needs to be great, perfected, have standards and change management, but also we need to really have an eye on the workflows. If our frontline clinicians who are doing the job every day aren't able to have the tools they need to do it efficiently, then we're not really doing our job. And you're absolutely right. Everyone, it needs to be some strong communication so everybody knows what's happening, what the priorities are, and what we're trying to work to fix to make everyone's life easier.
So let's talk about a few specific examples on pharmacy informatics, with analytics really being the first one. Because, if you broke pharmacy out from some of our larger operations, given the amount of revenue and expense they're responsible for, they'd actually be equivalent to a mid-sized U.S. corporation. But I think in terms of the business analytics, they use to run their operations, they don't look anything like a successful business of equivalent size. And comparatively, I think too many pharmacy services are operating with tin cans and a string when it comes to analytics capabilities.
That's
So,
right.
what's your perspective on the analytics horsepower available for pharmacy?
Yeah, this is a really a growing area, which I think it's starting to get the attention it needs, but we can continue to swing the spotlight on analytics. I think leaders in the healthcare space have always been great about querying for specific questions. So I need a report to answer this question, but we've really been less successful as setting up dashboards, much like the dashboard of a car, to monitor the various aspects of business. Do we have a dashboard to monitor our clinical success, our financial success, our operational success? And I think that's really where we need to go. In general, when we're looking at analytics, the process is we need to gather the data, which is from disparate sources in the institution. And this is particularly challenging in medication use because you have to know where to look. We need to visualize that data and kind of convert it to information and then take action on it and monitor the results of the action. That's the work we need to do in these dashboards. Medication use is such a special case with the complex clinical, operational, and financial data coming from different systems. And as we've talked about this during this podcast, is that really widespread spread effect on the healthcare system. That's what people identify with medicine today. Getting care is getting medications. And we know that the revenue impacts the overall revenue of the institution to a great deal.
Just in terms of investing in analytics, I think some of our clients are really on the cutting edge, and we've seen them actually invest in and hire data scientists dedicated solely to the pharmacy analytics operations. So, what do you think of those types of investments?
Absolutely. And I think, the Cleveland Clinic has done a really nice job with that. And I think when we talk to these leaders who've built these analytics programs, it's start slow and grow over time, and make this slowly build this. And it's really necessary to have resources. I think that pharmacy informatics needs to have analytics dedicated thought leaders and who can work with the chief pharmacy officer, answer questions from the chief financial officer, and also from IT as well. But this is such specialized knowledge that having the people that can inform these data science activities, and pull insights from medication use is really important because this can be both structured and unstructured data depending on how it's stored in the various systems that we use. I think this is also, I want to call out, this is a growing area for certified pharmacy technicians. Technicians have great operational and medication use knowledge, and they can really add on to additional training with analytics, informatics, and supply chain to be able to do this work, and present this information to senior leaders in the organization that can monitor and take action on it. And as I mentioned previously, I think this can really be scaled over time. I think sometimes people worry about making a big investment in there. Really, you can start with one or two resources, start setting up the process and the one or two things that you're most high priority to monitor, have some success with that, and build on that team over time.
Let's talk a little bit about interoperability. I think far too often in healthcare and in pharmacy, technology is implemented to solve a specific problem, but then thinking down the road how that technology actually fits into the overall informatics architecture and its ability to effectively communicate with the EHR and other systems, that sometimes isn't really well thought out. So, how do you see this whole interoperability scenario playing out in the market?
Yeah, I completely agree, Jim. We just came back from the ASHP mid-year meeting, and I tell you, interoperability is high on the minds of our health system leaders out there. And I think our vendor colleagues are realizing that this is something that needs to be on the top of their product roadmap. I wish we had a better word for it than interoperability. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but integration, harmonization, whatever you want to use to say it, we're all saying the same thing. And I think first and foremost is that these products within a platform need to work together. So that's the thing. If you buy an Apple phone, a Windows laptop, like it all works together within the product. And then, so that's the basic step. And then the next step is that the products need to work amongst themselves to seamlessly and transparently share information. So think about our automation platforms and our electronic health records. Like these really need to be able to change information seamlessly, and really we shouldn't have to think that hard about it. I think we're going to continue to see our governmental bodies, our state bodies, our advocacy organizations put together these standards that the vendors should be following. And then our health system partners are really going to hold vendors accountable to these standards to make sure that we're able to exchange information. There's no one product that serves all needs of a health system. So we're going to have multiple products working together. And regardless of where the patient is, if they're acute care, critical care, ambulatory care, it should be seamless for them that they have the same level of interaction with technology. And as we were just talking about analytics, I just want to point out that in order to have a successful analytics program, this data needs to be, these disparate data sources need to be able to talk together and be structured in a way that you can aggregate the information. Otherwise, you're still fighting this battle of having these disparate data sources and trying to clean it up so that you're able to visualize what's going on in your organization.
Yeah, are you seeing any trends in that regard? In terms of an organization really pushing hard to use all the modules available from their EHR vendor versus kind of best of breed solutions that might actually have a little bit more functionality?
Yeah, I think that's exactly the trend we're going. So when we're out there talking to our health system partners, we're really thinking about optimizing the technology that they have, going deep with fewer technologies rather than shallow with many, which I think was the approach before. Like, I'm just going to get the best pharmacy clinical monitoring software that's out there versus, well, this is 90% of the way there. Let's optimize it and customize it to our organization and make sure it works for us. And so I think we're moving from a product based to a platform based solution, and picking vendors that are able to deliver these platform vendors that are able to deliver 80% of the technology needs. For example, one automation vendor who can do inventory management operations, and one EHR vendor who can do the day to day of running the pharmacy, clinical monitoring, clinical documentation. Um, that being said, I just want to acknowledge that there is always going to be the need for these specialty products out there that meet the demand for certain areas, or where health systems want to drive innovation and they want to use a specialty project to try to move the profession forward. But this should probably be 20% or less of your overall technology stack, and really spending your time on deeply getting the value from these platforms that you've invested in.
Just joining you at ASHP and coming back, going through the exhibit halls, certainly artificial intelligence was one of the big buzzwords in the exhibit hall. And, it's hard to pick up any healthcare IT publication these days and not see something about the potential application of AI. And, certainly I think there could be a lot of very positive applications of AI in the pharmacy space, like early identification of patients needing treatment, or early identification of patients that could benefit from different treatment strategies like active treatment in cancer to palliative care. But, this technology can also cause issues like the current concerns that AI algorithms used by payers are inappropriately denying care to patients in need. So, what are your thoughts about AI and its application in pharmacy?
Yeah, I think this is the buzzword bingo for 2023. AI is definitely the term. Like you said, every vendor, I think, if they didn't have it in their product, they put a sticker on there to say it has AI too, and we're seeing that in the consumer space as well. People are very um, eager to get on the bandwagon with this. And I think my view is we should see this. This is another area where terminology is kind of overlapping a lot. My favorite so far is, instead of calling AI artificial intelligence, that we should be calling it augmented intelligence. And I like that a lot because I think that's where we should be in the healthcare space. We've gone to this era of big data where there's more data than we can process, and the signal versus the noise gets lost sometimes. Think about, as you mentioned, these drug interactions. There's definitely sometimes you want that to show, but there's a lot of noise in there as well. And you think about a patient who comes into an ambulatory clinic and gets their blood pressure checked, or on an acute care stay, they may have 100 data points of blood pressure, and sorting through some of that information becomes challenging. So this is where I see the role of augmented or artificial intelligence, is to reduce this manual burden of data collection and to kind of bring it to the forefront of someone who can make an informed decision about that. Um, so I fully see us. I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg here. Eventually, this will be a feature set in a lot of the products that we use, and will be baked into things. And that's where we see it going already. The automation technology software to help you collect operational metrics that you need attention at, pharmacy management software. And we're already starting to see this become a core part of electronic health record systems, responding to the concern that it's become an increasing burden for physicians, pharmacists, and nurses. And we really want to make sure they get the signal, the thing they need to put their professional hat on and address, versus just noise that may need to be collected but doesn't require a human brain that's already overstressed. But I definitely think this idea that it's going to replace people is probably not. We're not quite there yet. We're not to Skynet level concern, though some people are talking about that. But there's a lot we can do to help clinicians be better ready to practice in a modern environment using these tools.
Another hot topic is, I think the continuing and escalating threat of data security breaches, with malware, spyware, ransomware, whatnotware. Yeah, and I know that any of our projects that involve data now have been going undergoing much more rigorous data security assessments before we're allowed any kind of access. And certainly our cybersecurity insurance costs have also taken a big jump up, even though we've never had a data issue. What are you seeing on this issue, and what should pharmacy informatics services be thinking about?
Yeah, I think you're right, Jim. To me, this is even a hotter topic than AI, but doesn't have the jazz that AI has in the workspace. I mean, I know a lot of us read Becker's wonderful newsletters in healthcare, and every day you open it up, and there's a health system vendor who's been compromised with various degrees of impact. And when you look at the surveys, the not only the CIO and CTO, but now the chief operating officer and chief financial officer are very concerned about this space and the impact on operations and revenue. Um, I think we have to accept that there's bad actors out there who are continuing to target health systems for political, such as national security reasons, and financial reasons, such as ransomware. And it's not going away anytime soon. I suspect to see healthcare continue to invest in this space to make sure not only that they have the tools in place, but can really respond in an agile way to the constant changing nature of it. By the very nature of a hacker, like someone who cleverly solves problems, as soon as one road gets blocked, they're trying another road to get into the system. So this is very dynamic. It's not just you implement your cybersecurity program and then you're good forever. Um, I think in the pharmacy space, we really need to make sure we're partnering with health system IT security. So it's usually its own area inside IT, and realize that we really have a shared responsibility for security and medication use technology. And pharmacy is very technology savvy, and I think we're kind of catching up to the security part of it. I don't think we're specializing in that as much as we should. Um, Early on in several years ago, I was taking in a position in a new healthcare system, and they were doing a swap of some of the automated dispensing cabinets, and one of the contractors who was supposed to do that left the top of the ADC in their car, and it got broken into and stolen. And immediately there, that was like all those patient names, all that medication use information, the nurses' names was all compromised and out on the market. I don't know who would buy that, but it's just we all have to be careful about that. And that's just a routine practice inside pharmacy, doing the maintenance to some of those automated dispensing cabinets. So I think we may see that inside pharmacy, people who play either IT roles or compliance roles be much more focused on these security aspects as a shared responsibility to with IT security and take ownership of that.
Yeah, I think that's interesting too, because one of the strategies is to break into the EHRs through these some of these ancillary technology devices, where the individual devices security protocols might not be as strong as what you'd see in the EHR, but once you're in, you're in.
And some of the social engineering as well. That's the clever one that we've seen lately, where they say, "Oh, I'm just going to call the help desk and say I need my password reset," and they aren't taking the appropriate steps to treat that as like, well, this may not be one of my employees. And if nothing else, these people are clever, and we have to be as clever as they are in putting proactive things in place.
I was recently speaking to the chief financial officer in just a small community hospital, and he said they get over 200 hack attempts a day just for a small community hospital. So vigilance, I think, is the optimal word for sure.
Yeah, they say sometimes when you're thinking about your home security, little things like having your lights on, having, this and that, and, having a ring camera. And then the burglar is just going to be like, that's too much trouble. I'm just going to go on to the next house. And I think in some ways, maybe health system is the same way. They'll see that the front doors are locked, there's some processes in place, and so they're just going to move on to the next health system. And you don't want to be the next health system.
Exactly. We all need Kevin McAllister from Home Alone, right?
Yes, exactly.
Well, maybe one last topic. I'd like to hear what you think about our current approach to education and training in pharmacy informatics, and really where we are in terms of personnel resources.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about this area. I feel, as you get further in your career, you start thinking about who's going to be next and who's going to take over this out and where our profession is going. I have the pleasure of still being able to interact with pharmacy students, and I think we have a long way to go. Returning from the mid-year, I spoke with a lot of student pharmacists and residents in both pharmacy practice programs and pharmacy informatics programs, and I'm just surprised that even still in 2023, there's a lack of standard approach to teaching this in the PharmD curriculum and PGY1 programs. If the student or the resident is assertive and passionate, then people always find them a way. But not everyone is really getting exposed to this in the way they should. Informatics and especially data analytics need to be core components of PharmD programs moving forward. We have to acknowledge that not every PharmD is going to practice in these areas, of course, but every pharmacist will interact with technology and data in their career 100%. That's what they're going into. I like to, whenever I teach the students, I like to say, who just can't stand technology? And someone naturally takes the bait and raises their hand. And I use it as an example of this, that healthcare is not the place for that, because healthcare and technology go hand in hand. Um, I've also seen some positive trends with combined PGY1, PGY2 programs and analytics, really taking a page from the health system, pharmacy administration and leadership programs. And most of the PGY2 informatics residents I talk to now have a dedicated analytics rotation as part of one of their core competencies coming out. So I think that's really great for the specialists, but we also need now to work on the generalists, people who are practicing these areas. And lastly, I would say that when we're building these informatics teams in the future, current state in the future, we need to make sure that we're having team members who can address the clinical, operational, and technical aspects of informatics. And so, in my mind, these should be staffed with not only pharmacists, but pharmacy technicians, and as well as technical resources who can help us maximize these, the hardware. It's not all software. We have to make sure that we have the right tech hardware in place. I think the Epic EHR is a great example of that. Over the years, their specifications for the cameras to be used in the IV workflow, the monitors that people are supposed to be used so they can visualize the information, that has really changed over time. And I feel for some of our colleagues who are working off a single screen laptop when they really need to have dual screens or, like a large screen to be able to see everything they need to. Um, and again, I'll say I would like to see more formalized training for pharmacy technicians in this area. I think they're a core component of informatics team and definitely underutilized in today's environment.
Yeah, I think back to my own training to your point, and I think, every day, yet another day that I made it through without having to use third quarter organic chemistry, but every day I use informatics, analytics, and data.
Yes, despite what my biochem teacher said, I do not know how to draw the Krebs cycle from memory, but I do know things about technology which we use every day.
Exactly. Joe, it's really been great getting your perspective on some of the key issues in pharmacy informatics. So thanks again for joining the podcast, and thanks to everyone for listening. And we hope you all have a wonderful holiday season.
Thanks so much, Jim. Been an absolute pleasure.